Well, hey guys, thanks for tuning in to the Straight Out of Prison podcast. My name is James K. Jones, and this is my story.
And this is Haley Jones, and this is his story that has now become a part of my story.
So the stories are starting to intersect.
They're starting to intersect. At least we're in the same time zone and the same state.
We're almost in the same city because the time living in Gardendale, your parents were in Gardendale, but I was looking at opening a restaurant in Gardendale at that time. But we'll talk about that another time.
Yeah.
Let's talk about, this is your time, girlfriend.
It's the Haley Show today.
It's so funny. This always takes me back to when we first started. I think we had recorded maybe 3 or 4 episodes, and I got a message from a guy that somehow got my cell phone number, and he wanted to be on the podcast. And I said, we're going to do other people's stories, but we're going to finish ours first. And he said, well, I'm just trying to wonder when's her story going to be your story.
I'm trying to wonder.
Don't make no sense. So I said, you just stay tuned, bro. You'll see. Just stay tuned. So
it's so funny because I knew we were going to come down here and it was going to be, today is my portion of the story more or less after I moved to Alabama. And it is a lot easier for me to come down here and record when I'm asking you questions. Because I don't have to think about it. Like I listen to what you're saying, a lot of it, or some of it I've never heard before. Asking questions is my jam. I come up with them easily, quickly, but I don't have to remember anything.
You ask great questions and you draw things out of me that probably, especially the first episode, that never would have got taped if you hadn't have.
Yeah.
How do we do that? Well, how did you do that?
Well, thank you. But when the tables are turned, my memory is not nearly as good as your end. So,
and you get a little more self-conscious, I think.
I do, actually. It is a lot easier for me to talk about you and your story.
It reminds me, guys, we had a business meeting 6 or 7 months back, and Haley always has like fresh flowers on the table. And one of the ladies that we invited does wedding events where she does like these crazy, amazing flowers. And I remember when she sat down in front of the flowers, you like reached over there and you're like, this is just a little something I threw together from Publix. And you like moved it out of the way, almost like you didn't want your flowers being judged.
Well, I mean, I'm a 3 on the Enneagram. Yeah. We talk about this at nauseum. So I'm an achiever. I like whatever I'm doing to be not necessarily perfect, but better than everybody else's.
I know. It was just cute the way you took your flowers and like eased them out. Like, let's just move this Publix bunch out.
But even though I actually was very proud of that, I thought it looked really good.
It did.
But, when I did it, I wasn't looking at it from the lens of, a real like
florist,
rock star flower person's going to come in here.
and she is. She does amazing things with flowers. But.
So
Here we are.
You want to lead us into it?
Well, in the last episode, we talked about, my little brief encounter with being engaged to Karina, and how that worked out. I found my brother. The stage was being set, and it was about that time that I got to a place where I knew that I had to expand Kairos because I'd gone as far as I could go in the location that we were in. And I put out a Facebook message. If Kairos were to open a second location where we could do dinner, would we want to go would we want to go north, south, east, or west? Because, Birmingham's a big area. We could go north, Gardendale, Fultondale. We could go south, Alabaster, Pelham. We could go east, go towards Trustful. We could go west towards like Bessemer and all that stuff. So I put that out, and I think it was 900% uptick in my
your Facebook
the feed
the stats.
That one thing it was 900%, 948% engagement in the one night, and it was all for Gardendale, Alabama. Like the people here wanted come to Gardendale. But we'll get into that in another episode. But about the same time as when you were coming to Gardendale.
Yes.
So it's kind of neat the way our stories were parallel but different still.
Right. So you actually, to help trigger my memory before we recorded, you looked up a bunch of pictures from this time frame.
Yeah, pictures are great.
Which is really awesome because it does bring me back to that place. Mm-hmm. And it brings me back to such a sweet time, and I don't know, it's just crazy to think about how much has changed since then.
Yeah.
I mean, so much has changed, and the older you get, I think you just appreciate everything more. You appreciate people, you appreciate time, experiences, all the things. So
take us back to July the 3rd, 2010. That was, I turned 38 that day.
So July the 3rd, 2010. Yes, I can't remember how much we talked about before, but I'd lived in Sweden.
We've covered all that.
Okay, I owned a condo. I don't know if I told you that I actually shipped all my stuff. Okay, so I'm flying into Birmingham, but I'm flying to move here for the first time. I always say like, oh, I came back to Birmingham, but then I catch myself and say, well, I actually came here for the first time to live.
Well, you came back to America.
Right, I came back to America. That's true. So after being there for 8 years, and it was funny because there was a false alarm a few years prior to that in 2008. I said I was going to move back to the States, and my parents were in Pensacola, and I was going to move back to Pensacola, and I did, and they had this huge parade with signs, like family parade, with signs like, welcome home, Haley. They had actually made buttons with my picture on it, which is hilarious. But literally within 3 months, I got offered a job and decided to go back.
Yeah.
And it was the biggest letdown, like anticlimactic, like, psych your mind, going back to Europe.
And your parents were heartbroken over that.
They were heartbroken.
Especially your dad. I remember your mom telling me a story. Your dad was very bothered.
Yes. So fast forward 2010, I'm moving to Alabama, where they are, back to America for good. But of course, my dad and my mom, my family were like, we'll see about that. I don't know.
They weren't sure?
Well, yeah, because they were kind of wounded or scarred from that last time. I had moved back for good.
Yeah.
So, but I knew it was different. It was very resolute in my mind, and I understand that they didn't want to believe that until they knew it for sure.
Yeah, I can see
but
that.
I knew it was different. And
can I do a side note real quick?
Yeah.
Your mom told me that she prayed every day that you were gone for 8 years that you would come home. She said she knew enough to know that she couldn't try to force you or, try to influence you, but that she could not stand the thought of you being on the other side of the planet, even though you're living your best life and doing your career and following your dreams. But she said, I knew Jesus was going to bring her home, and, that she kept me on my knees all those years.
It's just funny because people that know me from here now, and they always, especially when my parents were alive, they like, you're so close to all your family. But back, it's not that I wasn't close to them, but I'm very much like where I'm at is where I'm at. Yeah. And I'm not very good at staying in touch. I was not very good at staying in touch with even my parents. I mean, I did, of course, but I was just very engaged and had like a full life somewhere else. And
well, I think that your personality is like that. You are in the moment.
Yeah.
Like that helps me. Like if we get in an argument, I'm the one that holds grudges. You don't even really hold grudges. You're like, okay, let's move on. Let's forget about it. So, I mean, I like that. But
so anyway, so I flew in July 3rd on your birthday. Didn't know you yet. And my parents had rented a lake house. So they had moved to Gardendale. They were actually staying in some apartments in Fultondale with my grandmother, had moved out of her house of 55 years. She had dementia, and it was kind of time for her to need to be living. So they had rented an apartment until they found a house. They were thinking about building, but, they wanted it to be one that they loved, like a dream house. So it took some time to do that. So they were living in this Fultondale apartment. So they had rented this huge lake house for the 4th of July weekend.
That's fun.
So my aunt and my uncle and my cousin, they had all come to stay at this lake house.
Shout out to the Cubans.
My mom was already there, and my sister and her family, kids. And also my brother, who was not living in Alabama yet, he was living in South Carolina, drove down to be at this lake house. It was just going to be a really fun weekend. So my dad picked me up from the airport, just him.
So everybody was there?
No, everybody was not at the hotel. I mean, at the hotel, at the airport.
No, everybody was there at the lake house?
Everyone
Pretty
was
much
at the
your
lake
whole
house.
Immediate family?
Yes.
Aunt Nora, all the people. Yeah.
Yeah, so my dad picked me up from the airport, and we drove straight to the lake house where everybody already was. And it was just a really fun weekend, all to be together. It was right on the lake. We had the fireworks. And so, yeah, it was good. But that was the beginning of my journey in Alabama, knowing I was going to be living in Alabama.
Well, I thought about a few things after we were married. I thought, we have American holidays that we don't even realize. Like when you were in Sweden, y'all didn't celebrate 4th of July. or Thanksgiving.
That's true. Those are very American holidays, but I had a group of American friends, and
Yeah.
we would get together and do barbecue and celebrate those things.
Oh, that's fun.
I mean, the country didn't celebrate it or shut down or it wasn't a holiday, but we would get together and celebrate it.
That's neat. Okay.
Yeah. So, anyway, and this is very typical me too. I mean, the purpose of me moving was to be close to my parents and family.
Yeah.
And to establish for the first time adult to adult relationships opposed to me as a kid when I'm in high school. And so beyond that, I had not really thought about too much what's it going to be like living in Alabama.
Yeah.
Just like, here I am. Let's find a job. So I had no job lined up. I mean, I knew I would have no problem finding one.
Yeah.
I had lots of experience, so I didn't really stress about that because I knew I could just stay with my parents very temporarily.
Yeah.
While getting all those things in place.
Well, can I interject something because I think it's so funny?
Yes.
You said that your dad took you to Bonefish Grill the first couple of weeks that you were here.
Yes.
And that you were sitting in the...
Which is a restaurant, for those of you who don't know, in Birmingham, yeah.
You were sitting in the lobby waiting to get in, and you were looking around all the men your age.
Yes, because I was 30 and single. Mm-hmm.
And you told your dad, I just don't see myself marrying anyone from Alabama.
That is true.
Talk about that.
We were sitting waiting for a table. There's a bar, we were having a drink, and I was just observing the people and, I mean, the men, like I said, 30 and single. And just the style, everything was different. The vibe, the style of people and men. Yeah. And, I mean, I'm coming from Europe,
What, they wear like panties over there or something?
James, no. I mean, it's just...
Blouses. They wore blouses.
And I had been there for so long that was my norm.
Yeah.
More than... And so it was just very different. And I remember thinking, and I even said to my dad, I just do not see myself marrying any man from Alabama if this is what it looks like.
But then, fast forward, you married the epitome of Alabama. Roll Tide.
Be careful what you say.
Phoenix
be careful
City.
What you say. So, we spent that weekend at the lake, and then I had, put my resume together. I was in the education world. I knew
so
that
refresh people, you're a teacher.
Yeah, I was a teacher, but I actually worked in this special needs program in the school.
But you had 2 or 3 degrees.
Yes.
And you had about 10 years under your belt as far as experience.
Exactly.
But most of that experience was in Europe.
Yes, all of it was in Europe.
So you did an
except 1
internship
year.
in Miami.
Yeah, but I just thought, even if I have to do something I'm taking a pay cut or not doing something, as high up in leadership or management, I was fine with that. I was just like, I'm just going to find something to get my foot in the door in the education world because that's what I know. And that's my experience. That's my education. So, so I'd made a list of schools in the area and I had my resume and I literally would get up at 7 o'clock in the morning because schools start earlier and I'd make a route and go to these different schools and I wouldn't make an appointment, but I would go and just introduce myself or try to introduce myself and say if there's any openings. So I was doing that. I also got on the sub list, substitute teacher list, in different school systems because that's always a way to get your foot in the door too.
So did you just stay like in North Birmingham or you went all over Birmingham?
I went all over.
Okay.
I went all over. And I learned very quickly what they say. I feel like I've said this a lot in the last couple of weeks. It is so true what they say about it's not about what you know, but it's about who you know. And I knew no one. And
well, not just you. Your parents didn't know anybody either.
Yeah, my parents didn't know anybody either. I mean, there were times I would drive to these schools and ask to see the principal, and they would tell me she was there. But then I'd say, I just want to introduce myself. And she would not come out and meet me.
Wow.
Because I think she was just like, who is this? This is weird. Like, I don't have time for this,
Yeah.
And
was that a regular thing?
Well, that happened probably a handful of times. Okay. I mean, I would say the majority of the time I was able to meet someone and, hand them my resume. I would feel encouraged, and then there would never be any calls, so I'd quickly get deflated.
Yeah.
But then there was those handful of times that I couldn't even get someone to come out and shake my hand and meet me. And
so what you're saying is if you're an outsider in this area, we weren't very warm and friendly to you.
It's tough. Like, it's very tough to be an outsider coming in, especially I think in the professional job world.
Do you think that's true anywhere? Or is that just here? Or?
I think it's probably true to some extent anywhere, but more so here.
Really?
I mean, it's just we call Gardendale modern day Mayberry. But I mean, I was looking outside of Gardendale, like I was looking Birmingham and beyond, It was just turned into what was a very exciting and hopeful change for me.
Yeah.
A big deal to, be 30 years old and uproot after almost a decade somewhere. And, my career was awesome. I love what I was doing. I had a condo, sold it, moved into a little apartment with my parents and my grandmother, and could not find a job to save my life.
Bless your heart.
And that was really the first time, I would say, in my life at 30 years old that I could not make something happen. Because I usually could always make something happen. Even if it wasn't what I wanted to happen or wasn't like my vision or my goal, like something, because
we're going to move the ball forward.
Right. I could because I'm willing to do whatever it takes. I'm a hustler. I get out there.
Yeah.
But this was the first time it was just so, I can't even tell you how discouraging it was to not be able to make anything happen.
So how did that affect was it just mess with your self-image? It was discouraging?
It was very discouraging, and it did mess with my self-image, and a perfect kind of segue into that of how it did.
So how did you end up working at Whole Foods? Like somebody with a teaching degree how did you wind up at Whole Foods?
Okay, so I hadn't mentioned that, but it was in the fall, and it was kind of clear to me. I mean, I was on sub lists, and I was subbing whenever they called me that I wasn't going to get a full-time job.
So does that mean you just
education.
have to sit around waiting on somebody to call you to substitute, or is it like a schedule?
Yeah, I mean, you do. You have to, and sometimes it's the night before, and it's just on a need basis. They need someone to come in. So I was getting...
So you really can't live off...
No, for sure.
Okay, yeah.
Not. But, in my case, I was living with my parents, so I had some cushion there. But I was really itching to get out and get my own place. But I knew I had to
living with your mom and dad
job.
And grandmother.
Yeah, I mean, after 12 years of being on my own.
Yeah.
So I saw this job fair thing or job drive, I don't know what you call it, on the local news for Whole Foods.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, well, I ain't got nothing else to do. May as well. So I went to it, and we didn't have a Whole Foods in the town that I grew up, and it was a very beach town, or at the time, I think there's one now, and it was always kind of like a upper scale.
Yeah.
And but they do have this specialty department that has wines and beers and cheeses and like specialty foods, which I mean, I love all of those things.
That's right up your alley. It definitely is.
And so, long story short, I went to this and got hired in the specialty department. Which I was excited about. I mean, I was so deflated. Like anything was like,
give me something.
Yes. And so also in my mind, I mean, I'm a very good reframer. So I'm like, well, obviously this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And obviously I'm supposed to be running this Whole Foods in a year. And this is where this is where I have to start, Yeah. And so I was very excited about it, but quickly got in. It's the first time I've ever had a job that I had to clock in.
Really?
Yeah. And that was an adjustment for me.
Was it humbling for you?
Well, it was just weird. Like I had, I don't know. I worked as a cocktail waitress in college. Like that was not really, I guess I clocked in there, but this felt different. This was like, you do your hours, you clock in.
You're on the clock.
And I mean, that's great for some people. I don't know. Some people love that.
Yeah.
But for me, I don't love that because if I'm doing something, I'm doing it. Yeah, so even if I clock out, like I'm still thinking about it and how can I do it better? Like it's just how I'm wired. And so it felt very counterintuitive for me just as a person. Like, oh, so I clock in and I start and then I clock out and I'm done. Like it was just a weird concept for me. I don't know. I liked it at first because you're learning the wines and memorizing the cheeses. But I mean, it's a food service job.
Well, tell us about what Abby said when you were like hyping. It was so funny. I love to hear you tell the story because you were like hyping it up.
Yeah, I was so excited because, I'd been so deflated. I was like, obviously this is my path, not what I thought, but I'm all in, And Abby, my little sister was just like, when I was telling her I got the job and I was so excited. And she was looking at me with this very confused look on her face. And she was like, so you're working at a grocery store. I was like, well, yeah, but it's like the Ferrari of grocery stores.
Yeah.
Reframe, right? So yeah, but I quickly realized, I mean, this is a food service job, and it's not like waitressing or serving, which I'd done before, where you have to, and if you know anything about me, I like to be cute. I like to wear cute outfits and wear heels. But when you go into this job, you had to put the little foot protectors on your tennis shoes that you have to wear. Well, I mean,
like the little mitten things?
Yes.
Like the hairnet things?
Yes.
You had to wear those on your feet?
Yes. And,
oh my goodness, this is great.
Right. And the things on your hands.
Gloves?
Gloves.
Yeah, that's normal.
And even something to like cover your head with a hat.
You had to wear a hat?
Yeah. And so,
my baby.
No,
I just know that's not you.
Sound like you're talking to Lula. No, it was not me
that's
at all.
Not you.
And but I just was like, but you know what? Here I am. That's what I'm supposed to be doing. And
that's one of the things I love the most about you. No matter what the hard season we're in, you're just like, because I remember when we found out we were having twins and we were in a bad place financially. I was still struggling to get out from under all the Cairo stuff. And we lived in an 800 square foot house. And it was 2 small bedrooms. And our credit was blocked. Like, we couldn't do anything. I mean, it was our house, but we couldn't. Could have sold it, I guess, but we couldn't buy another one just yet. And just racking my brain trying, what are we going to do? Like, what are we going to do? And we converted the dining room, which we never used anyways, into the boys' bedroom. And just the way that you like sprung into action and like, okay, we can figure it out. And we did. Yeah. And it worked. And I mean, we did 3 years of that with the boys.
Yeah.
We were packed to the gills, but you were never not happy. Like, you figure out a way to reframe, to readjust, and, do what we got to do. And I think that's one of your great strengths.
Thank you, babe.
That's what I'm saying, but.
Yeah, so one part of the specialty department is they have an olive bar and different, which I do love olives, but I like to eat them. And
I like the oil.
Yeah. So they have these things, and when you're refilling the olive bar, you have to have your full gear on. Like
your full gear?
Yeah, the things on your feet and hands and head, I remember filling that olive bar, I was cleaning it, refilling it, whatever I was supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, what if somebody came in that I've been trying to get these teaching jobs, then sees me, And I got kind of embarrassed and almost ashamed, And then I thought, what has happened in my life?
How did I get here?
How did I get here? Like 6 months ago. I mean, by my own choice.
Yeah.
Which was weird too at the time. Like I was living in Europe, had a condo in this awesome area of town, was like flying all over Europe, traveling, working, like
jet setter.
Had friends, had a group of friends, and then 6 months later, I'm in Alabama, a small town in Alabama, like getting olive juice on me, wearing these protectors all over my body, like for the, and I thought, what just happened? I'm 30 years old. Like, what am I doing? Like, what did I do to myself here? And it was just humbling and disheartening, and it was just hard. And it was and I remember going home that night, because I was also living in the small apartment with my parents, watching TV, and me and my dad got to talking, and I was just telling him about that experience and how I was feeling, and just wasn't feeling good, and like, maybe I need to be doing something different. And I'll never forget it. He paused the TV, he paused the TV and looked at me and said, well, what defines you? And like, it was it makes me emotional, because number one, it's a great question, but like, I was in this moment in time of just like, what does define me? I don't know. Like, because up to that point, I think how I'm wired, how I'm made, but I don't think this is special to me. I think this is true for all people.
Yeah.
You take like what your accomplishments are, what you're doing, what you've been able to achieve, or maybe even what's happened to you, bad things, and like the victim or whatever, and you let these set of set of experiences that you've been doing or have been done to you, like be the defining, like this is who I am. That's who I am.
So it becomes your identity.
And that was my mindset mentality subconsciously. You know what, I lived in Europe. I had moved to Europe. I was an adventurer. Like I had established a career. I was well respected. I had friends. I had bought a condo. Like I was that girl. I mean, I was like,
you're doing the thing.
Yeah. I mean, in my mind, I was like pretty awesome, but all those things had defined who I was. And all those things are really neat and great. But like in that moment, I think it was just taking a step back and really like looking inwardly, like what does define me? Who am I aside from?
It was basically like the rug got pulled out from under you.
Yeah.
All the things that you put your confidence in were gone, and it was just a humbling season for you.
Right. If you take away all those things for me to really like think about and decide like who am I, like taking away. And so I really like from that time, for the next week or so, just, as a believer and really like, who am I? I'm a daughter of the King. And no matter like what job I'm doing at the time, like that is what I was going to stand on. And that is what I was going to be confident in and know that, whatever was ahead for me, like didn't change the core fact of that I was a daughter of the King and that there's a good plan and that there's a purpose.
Well, let's segue into that. I have a question about that. We talked in the episode, a couple episodes back when you talked about going to Church of the Highlands. Pastor Chris gave the My Five tool that you took back to Sweden. And that was actually the thing that ultimately led you to move to Alabama.
Right.
When you came to Alabama in 2010, did you start going to Church of the Highlands?
Yes, immediately.
So there's a funny story, and you got pretty involved pretty quick.
Yeah.
But you tell a funny story that when you got here, you were like, this Pastor Chris Hodges, his sermon changed my life.
Yeah.
So you're like, I think I need to go talk to him. So you piled up in your car and you drove to Grants Mill?
Well, this is, listen to his messages. And I mean, this is still the message of, find your purpose. So, I mean, I was on a very hot track to like, I need to find my purpose and like do it, especially in the midst of this identity, like crisis or rediscovery, whatever you want to call it. Yes. So I moved here. I started going to Highlands right away, got involved right away, did everything they told me to do. Yeah.
And for people, just for context, like that are not from around here, Church of the Highlands is a mega church. It is, we have 20 campuses. It's all over the place. There's 50,000 members. Yeah. So, I mean, it's a big, you don't just walk in the pastor's office and talk to him.
Right. So, but I didn't know. I'd never been to a mega church.
Yeah, you didn't know.
I mean, I hadn't been going to any church, in Europe. So then I was just like, but you know what? That message brought me here. I'm going to church now, and I'm going to do everything they tell me to do. So in my world, Pastor Chris is my pastor, and he is. Yeah. But I did not have I didn't even grow up going to a big church. I always went to a small church. And so for me, this was no different. It was just bigger. It had more people. And so I wanted Pastor Chris to know that I was here, because of course he wants to know that I had moved and I was plugged in. And
his message was what got you here.
Yeah, and I just wanted to like unpack with him a little bit about like, what my purpose is, kind of things I was thinking. Let's just have a convo about that, So, I got my car. I think it was a Tuesday morning, just drove up to the church, like the office, and walked into the front office and said, hey, I'm Haley Jones. Just moved here. I'm here.
You weren't Haley Jones. You were Haley
Hobart. I was. You're right. I wasn't Haley Jones. I said, this is, my name's Haley Hobart. I just moved here. I'm going to church here, and I'd like to see Pastor Chris. She was like, right now? I was like, yeah. She said, do you have an appointment? No, I don't. She's like, do you have something that you need to discuss? Is there something? She was just kind of, I was like, no, just me in general. That's what I was talking about. And the way she looked at me, I mean, now I understand, was just like, this girl is off her rocker. She thinks she's going to just come in and walk right into Pastor Chris's office and have a chat. But for me, that was, I don't know.
You didn't understand the context. But
no, I didn't understand that was a weird thing to do.
But now we understand he has almost 50,000 members in his church. If everybody did that, he would never.
Right. And I started to read her reaction to me after a few minutes and me asking a couple questions, like just kind of like a little like pity.
Oh.
I'm very discerning. I mean, I could just feel that, but I was just like, and it was off-putting. I mean, she wasn't doing anything wrong. I think she was just shocked because, like, who does that, you know? But I did not realize that until I was in it, doing it. And anyway, she's like, well, what you're going to need to do is send an email to his secretary and the nature, and then maybe, but I'm just going to tell you that, you know, he doesn't really, I don't know what she said. She said it in a nice way, but, like, basically, don't count on it.
Yeah, and go talk
Bottom
to
line, don't count on it. Like, who's your campus pastor? I'm like, no, I go here, you know, like, and so I left there, and I remember like crying because I just felt like.
Were you hurt? You didn't tell me that.
Yeah, I called my mom like crying. I mean, I'm not like proud of that, but I just called her and I was just like, I just wanted to talk and tell them I'm here, you know, like in the.
Well, I mean, it is a pretty miraculous story. I mean, you're living on the other side of the planet, and you happen to go to one service where he tells, and it gets you back here,
right?
And it's something your parents.
It gets me here. I never lived here before,
and that's something also that your parents have been praying for 8+ years,
right?
So it is a miraculous story.
I just felt deflated. And I think, you know, you got to remember what I was just telling about the job thing.
Yeah.
Like, I just felt like slam door after slam door. Like, just like, who are you? No, thank you. Like, and I just wasn't used to it. Yeah. I mean, like I said, that was and so that was yet another kind of like, oh, you're so cute. Like,
so up until
you
this
can
time,
leave now.
up until this time, and I know that you were the apple of your daddy's eye.
Yeah.
And basically what you're saying is that for 30 years, doors had always opened for you. You were, you know.
Doors were swinging open.
You just
I'm like, hey.
Walk through the doors.
Yeah. And especially, you know, we had lived in the same town for 30-something years.
Yeah, so
we
you knew
a lot
everybody.
of people. Yeah, yeah.
And you're very social, you're very extroverted. Like you're all about the people.
Yeah.
And then here you are. And it's not working out that way.
Yeah,
I can see how that could be very humbling.
Yeah, it was humbling and just hard. You know, you have the friendship piece. I didn't have any friends. I had my family, which I was thankful for, or my parents, my sister. But about the same time, actually, within 4 months, they found a tumor on my thyroid that was the size of a lime.
A lime?
And it had been affecting me for a while. Like my hair was falling out, like my weight was fluctuating. And there was a lot of things that I didn't know that it was all related to that, but it ended up being related to that. And so, that was kind of scary.
Yeah.
They thought it was cancerous at first because it was so aggressive and so big. And, but anyway, so I had to have surgery on that and go through that. And then there was a little bit of family drama, you know, after I moved here that I thought like, man, nothing of what I thought this was going to be, this experience is not what I thought.
It wasn't all rainbows and butterflies.
Yeah.
It's kind of like me getting out of prison thinking everything was going to be rainbows, butterflies, and unicorns, and then, you know, finding myself stuck in a hot, sweaty apartment, realizing I didn't have any air.
Right, yeah. And, you know, like we said, I am very adaptable. I can reframe things, like, fine, no problem. Like, I can just, what do you call it, like, brush things off my shoulder. Like, it's fine.
You're good at that.
But there was just too many things, I think. And at my age, I was feeling let me just say, so in Europe, none of my friends, or very few of my friends were married. Much less had kids. Yes, that's like, they do things a lot later there. So I was very much in the social norm there as far as like not being married. But then moving to Alabama, I just learned very quickly that I was definitely on the less common end of the scale.
Yeah, you're supposed to be married by
as far as being
21.
30 years old, never married, and no kids. So to find friends in that season, I mean, I think that would be hard no matter what season you're in, honestly, moving to a new place.
Yeah.
But it felt like everything just felt highlighted and magnified. Like, you know, to find friends, to find a job, and find a place to live, and then the tumor, and then, I mean, the church, even after not being able to meet with Pastor Chris. I stayed, you know, plugged in and very involved. And that was a saving grace for me because it just allowed me a way to connect and find people.
So you started doing everything, small groups, serving, all the things.
Yeah, I started
rocking and rolling.
Yeah.
Where did you move to?
So I moved to a little apartment once I got the Whole Foods job.
Mm-hmm.
I moved to a little apartment in Redmont Gardens, I believe it's called, but it's in Mountain Brook, the English Village. So Mountain Brook, Alabama is kind of like
It's a suburb.
A suburb, yeah.
So Birmingham is a big metro area city, and it's surrounded by dozens of pockets of little towns.
I love that word, and someone else described it to me that way. There's little pockets. Like there's the Mountain Brook pocket, there's the Vestavia, there's Hoover, and then you can go north, you have the Gardendale pocket. So for those of you that aren't from Alabama, know nothing about it. But it's all, in my mind, basically the same place. Yeah, like I call it all Birmingham.
You don't see it as different.
No, not at all. I mean, to me, it was just like, I moved to Birmingham, I live in Birmingham. Like,
and you found an apartment that you liked.
So I found this apartment, and I really loved it because it was small. I mean, my condo that I had in Europe was small. It was just me,
Yeah.
And so, but also that it was built in the 20s, so it had these original wood floors. It reminded me of Europe, honestly, and that's why I liked it. I mean, it was a little more expensive, but there were some things you could walk to, like these little restaurants and a coffee shop, and it was
quaint.
Quaint. It was right near the botanical gardens and the zoo that I could actually walk there and go. So I loved that. And
Mountain Brook is also, you're right in the heart of Birmingham, so you can go anywhere.
Right.
You're here.
So
but being an outsider, you didn't really understand.
Well,
let me bring some context in.
Yeah.
Mountain Brook, I moved to Birmingham in 1999. I learned very fast. Mountain Brook is where all the rich people live. That is, but it's true though. Like the real estate prices in Mountain Brook are the highest in the state of Alabama. Somewhere I read, maybe even in the South. Like it is when Birmingham was built, they call it the Magic City because it sprung up overnight.
Yeah,
and it was centered around the steel industry because of Red Mountain and the iron ore that was here. But that was all the old money, all the people with all the money started building houses in Mountain Brook, and that's the richy rich section of Birmingham. And there's an air and an attitude among people like anywhere else in Birmingham. We live in Birmingham, Homewood, stuff like that. But Mountain Brook is like the deluxe version of life.
Yeah, the deluxe version. Yeah, I mean, I guess.
But you didn't know that. You just ran into an apartment.
I had no idea.
But when you would meet people, you would say, "Hey, I live in Mountain Brook. Have you heard of it?"
Yeah, so there was
and
even
they would
this
give
salon.
You attitude like you were trying to brag.
Well, I said, they're like, "Oh, well, where do you live? Where's your apartment?" I said, "Oh, it's in this little village in Mountain Brook. Have you heard of it?" Because, I mean, I hadn't heard of it. Like, how, and I could feel when I said that a couple times that people would just get this like air and attitude, and I was genuinely confused.
Yeah,
I'm like, oh, we were having a good conversation. I could tell we were vibing, and now I don't understand the attitude that I'm getting. Like I sensed it. It was very subtle, but I was just like, what just happened? What did I say? I don't understand. And then someone, I think it was same situation, but it was someone I had kind of been talking to more.
Yeah, and
he laughed and he said, and he was able to tell me, he's like, well, I mean, I'm laughing because it's kind of funny because you sound, I know you're not, but you sound like you're a little bit condescending. Like if you would have been if I would have been from Mountain Brook and be like, oh, have you heard of it? Like you're not one of us. You're not one of,
yeah.
But of course that's not at all
what you meant,
what I meant or what I was. So, but anyway, yeah, so I found that apartment and even my parents, didn't know that either. Yeah. And they were like, are you sure it's so old? Sure you want to pick that one, there? And, but it did remind me of Europe and that's why I picked it. So,
that's neat.
But yeah, so soon after, I was working at Whole Foods but was still, struggling to make ends meet.
How do they pay well? Does Whole Foods?
They paid well for a grocery store. I don't know.
Yeah. But could you live off
I
of
don't
it?
remember how much they paid exactly, but it was definitely hourly. And I could live off of it, but barely. So I actually ended up getting a second retail job at Anthropology, which is a clothing,
I didn't know
furniture, store. But that was a complete disaster because you got a discount and I would just spend all my money like buying stuff. You got like 40% off, and then there was 2 items a month that you would get 60% off, which of course, I'm not going to pass that up. And so, but that was terrible because it did not, the purpose was for me to like get a little cushion, like a little bit of cushion, but that wasn't happening.
Well, tell us how you ended up, because this is really part of your story, becoming a part of my story, was that you went to work for your dad.
So right out of the gate, my dad was trying to convince me to come work for him.
So how did you end the Whole Foods? You just got tired of olive juice and...
Well, hold on. When I say right out of the gate, like right when I moved there and was looking for teaching jobs, he was bringing that up. And I was like, no. I mean, because I didn't want to work for my dad.
Yeah.
I just didn't. And just the whole idea of like, you know what? I need to make this on my own. I need to do it on my own. I don't need daddy's help, okay? It became, he ramped it up when I was not able to find a job, like I explained. And then finally I was like, Whole Foods, and he was like, Haley, come work for me. Like, you can be flexible. Like, I'll pay you this, whatever. And so finally, after that Anthropology job was very much proving to be not putting money in my bank account, but only in clothes in my closet, I finally, really started entertaining the idea and thinking about it. So I took him up on it. And
were you selling insurance?
It was kind of like this. He wanted me to do his marketing.
Okay, so he had a pretty big operation in Gardendale.
Yeah, he did. He had about, I think at the time, like 5 or 6 team members. And so I would come in to do the marketing.
And one of them was your brother-in-law, Sean?
Yes, one was my brother-in-law, Sean, married to my sister, Abby.
Now, when did Hobie come?
So Hobie came a year after I moved here.
Were you already...
a year later.
And Hobie's Haley's brother?
Yes.
So for the first time since y'all were kids...
Yeah.
Your whole family was living in Gardendale, Alabama.
Right.
And your whole family was basically working for your dad because Abby's husband...
Well, pause that. So it was a big decision for me to quit Whole Foods and go work for my dad. Not just because I had it in my mind, I'm not going to work for my dad.
Yeah.
Like, I don't need his help. I want to make it on my own. But he
convinced
like a pride
me.
Thing? Yeah, a little bit. And he convinced me. I mean, I'd been on my own for, 10, 12 years. So I was like, nothing's going to change now. But he just little by little, it just started to make sense, you know, and I was going to get paid more. I was going to have more flexibility. I was going to kind of get to do some creative things like with marketing. He was selling that to me, even though I do not have any background like education in marketing or business whatsoever. But eventually,
something about it appealed to you.
Yeah. I mean, eventually he convinced me and I ended up quitting my job at Whole Foods and going to work for my dad full time.
Well, tell us about coming into Gardendale, Alabama and doing the marketing for your dad. And, that's a big culture shock, but at the same time, you were making things happen in Gardendale, Alabama.
Started working with my dad marketing. I just started kind of digging into that. What did that look like? What does it mean? Ideas for that and getting his name out there to people know who he is. I mean, he worked for State Farm. He was a State Farm agent, so everyone knows State Farm. But by this
But at the same time, there's also, just in Gardendale, there's 7 State Farm agents.
Right. By this time, though, I had realized like kind of the small town feel and that it was important that people knew who you were. Yeah. And so that was, I think, my first initiative for my dad, like working for him is like, okay, we got to get people exposed, I guess, to like him and us and who we are. And
so y'all moved into this community, which is a very tight-knit community, and you're here to stay. Like, you're not just doing business.
Oh, yeah. I mean, my dad, like we mentioned before, moved here at 60 to start a whole new gig, I mean, he was in it to win it. Relocated. I mean, they're staying. This is there forever. I mean, even when I started working for my dad in Gardendale, I still like lived in my Mountain Brook apartment. So it was like 20, for those of you that don't know, it's like 20, 25-minute drive. But like I said, it's all Birmingham to me, so it doesn't matter. But yeah, so one of the first things I did was, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to just honor a different business in the community. Yeah. Every week is the business of the week, and I'm going to go in and interview them and like, who are you? Like, why we love them. It was just an interesting move on my part. I don't even know why, like how I thought of it. Like here we are, the nobodies that nobody knows.
Yeah.
On the bottom, and that when you think of it that way, and I'm gonna be highlighting. Let me give you an example. Jeff Dennis Jewelers as the business of the week.
Yeah.
And he's like, who are you? This is a guy that's been around for
ever
a long time. He's like a pillar in the community. Like everybody knows him.
He's also very involved. He's built parks and sponsored parades. And
like he has a very successful, but I didn't know that. I mean, I'm just like, hey, I'm here to highlight you as the business of the week. He's like, who are you? I'm like, Haley Hobart with Grand Hobart State Farm right across the street. And I know that people must have been amused. Yeah. But I didn't know what I didn't know. I mean, I just was trying to find a way to connect with people and get to know people.
There are things if you don't know, you just don't know. I met a guy when we were doing the Cairo stuff. It was actually in Jeff Dennis Jewelers. And he said, I heard you were opening a restaurant in Gardendale. And I said, yeah. And he said, what is it called? He was a police officer. And I said, Cairo's. And he said, what kind of food? And I said, well, it's kind of a fusion between Southern and Greek. And he was like, oh, kind of like our place. And I was like, where's your place? And he said, no, our place. I said, what place? And he was like, our place. And I got frustrated. Like, what place? But the name of the restaurant that he was talking about was a little place in Gardendale. The name of the restaurant is Our Place.
Right, right. I had that same experience with that restaurant.
Yeah.
So that was one thing I did. And then I got introduced to an organization called BNI that someone invited me to a meeting. And
that's business networking.
Actually, Anthony Westbrook. Yeah. It's a networking organization. And I mean, you network, obviously. But there are these chapters that are groups that are what do you call it? They're category exclusive, so you can only have one of each kind in. Mm-hmm. So once there's a realtor in, there can only be one realtor. So I love the idea, especially for me and my dad. It's perfect. Like, you don't know anybody. You need to get connected and like try to find a way to start establishing relationships.
But then those groups that are already formed, they probably got insurance.
And that was the problem. So I love the idea. I love the concept. There's a lot of structure to it. I felt like I could kind of sink my teeth into it. It was something I could just go after. But of course, there was no chapter in the Birmingham area that had an insurance seat open, which is the one I would take, working for my dad, obviously.
So you just started your own chapter.
So I decided to start my own chapter, which was a lot of work. You had to, do this kickoff event and try to get 100 plus people there. Mm-hmm. You had to have 25 paid committed members, which is something. I mean, you're asking them, or the rule from the BNI is that, it's about $700. So you're asking them to commit financially, but also like a time commitment. And so, but it really gave me something to get my head around doing this job that I had never done before. Yeah. Trying to get in a community that I didn't know anybody. Mm-hmm. It just gave me a track to run on. And it ended up being a great track because I did meet a lot of people and I was able to connect to a lot of people. It gave me credibility since I was the one starting it, hustling that out.
But you're also helping other businesses grow their business.
Right. And so, the whole idea, and I love this, is that if we all do it and we all really commit to it, everyone can win.
Yeah, it's a win-win deal.
So
tell us about the meeting where you met the mayor. I love this story.
Well, I started networking, going to the chamber events. For those of our European listeners, they have these
Chamber of Commerce.
The city, and they bring together different business owners and salespeople, and it's basically what is the purpose? I guess coming together.
It's your networking. It's networking.
Yeah, just getting to know people.
It's networking.
And so it was one of my first ones. And
I love this story.
I was talking to some guy. I don't know what we were talking about. It was small talk. But then another man came in, and he dropped me, the guy I was talking to, like a hot potato, our conversation. It was clear that he wanted to talk to this other guy.
Somebody more important.
Yeah.
I hate that when that happens. I can't say stuff like that.
And so I was like, okay, well, maybe I want to talk to him too, whoever he is, And so I just kind of shimmied myself over into the new circle he had made, with these other people. Yeah. And just introduced myself. Hey, I'm Haley Hobart. And, what do you do? What do you do? And I got to him. I was like, hey, so what do you do here? And he said, oh, I'm the mayor. and he was kind of like, you don't know that,
I'm the mayor.
kind of. And I was like, oh, okay, awesome. So like, how's that going for you? Like, how's it?
So you weren't, and for those of y'all that don't really know Haley, she's not really impressed with titles, and I love that about her. Like don't take yourself so serious. But and I know we'll talk about this. I got to meet the mayor of Gardendale. He was the one that really sealed the deal for me bringing Kairos here. But you were just like, great, I'm the mayor.
Yeah, and truly,
I'm a VIP, a very important person.
You got to remember too that, and even as I'm talking, this becoming more clear to me that no one's, or at least I wasn't paying attention to any of that kind of stuff, like growing up in high school or in college, and I really became an adult, I believe, in Europe.
Yeah.
And, where you grow up, you get a job, you pay your bills, you like start realizing things. And their like structure of like cities, states, towns, and like leadership is totally different. Like it's not the same. Like they don't have mayor.
What's the difference? What do they have? How do they run the city?
Well, I don't know, honestly. You put me on the spot. But I never remember there being like it's not the same culture, I guess, where people get together and you have the mayor and you do these.
Well, time out now. It's not even the same government. Like Sweden does not have, we're a democratic republic.
They have a prime minister and a king and queen.
Yeah, but Sweden is socialism. It's a socialist country.
Well, they wouldn't say that, but.
Well, no, but just as defined how you govern yourself.
Right, yeah. It's definitely more socialistic for sure.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I just wasn't like, the point of that is...
You weren't super impressed
like the whole structure of things, like, the mayor, I really didn't know what the mayor did. What do you do? Like, I don't know the answer to that question.
That's hilarious.
Like, what do you as a mayor do? Like, you drive into work, and then what do you do? So...
That's funny.
It was a very genuine, like, what does that job look like,
Was he amused by you, or was he offended?
I think he was just surprised, like, who is she? Like, kind of. But he's never forgotten me.
Yeah.
After that.
No, he hadn't.
I think it was just confusing, and just, not really expected, I guess.
Well, real quick, he's not the mayor here anymore. He's moved higher up in government. He's in county government now. But our current mayor, Stan Hoagland, is someone that I love. But tell about the first time you met him when he was not mayor, when he didn't have a big title.
Okay, so, Stan Hoagland, who is the current mayor of our city, Gardendale, Alabama. Before that, he was, and I hope I'm getting this right, the Parks and Rec manager or guy of our city.
Yeah, he ran the Parks and Rec.
Right. So one of the things that I did is I did this social at my dad's office to like bring other people in so they could see the office, meet my dad, And so he came to this social and it was like an after work something, 4 to 6 or whatever. I've told you and we've talked about how hard it was to kind of integrate into a small town that everyone's been around forever, but nobody knows you.
Were you doing food, like chicken wings or something?
Yeah, it was like some kind of like...
to get people there?
Hors d'oeuvres or drinks or something, yeah.
Yeah.
And, but anyway, I remember this very distinctly because that was the very first time that I felt like someone really took interest in me and in my dad and like, gosh, who are you guys? Why are you here? I want to hear the story of like who are you basically? I want to know and was interested.
Yeah.
And that was Stan Hoagland.
And he opened up to you.
He is the first person that asked questions and that really was like, I want to sit down and hear more about how you guys got here, get to know you guys. And it was so genuine and it was so, and that was, I can honestly say from a business, I guess, person at that time, I guess I was a business person, my dad was, perspective. And even on a personal level that I felt that kind of genuine, like, want to... Acceptance is a good word. But it definitely left a mark on me. And I forever, like, feel like it speaks to his character.
And you've never forgotten it.
And I've never forgotten it. And I just really appreciate it.
Let me play that from this side. Like... I'm not from Gardendale, but I'm from Alabama. Mm-hmm. So a State Farm agent is moving in. He's got an agency. So what? There's one of those on every exit. Like, what's the big deal? But for your dad, his agency was more than that. It wasn't just about I'm selling insurance, I'm going to make a bunch of money. or I'm going to help people protect their house if a tornado comes through. Right?
Yeah, I mean, my dad was very passionate about, this sounds funny, and it is funny, but insurance,
helping people.
He would say, it doesn't, and I've said this many times, but he taught me, it doesn't matter who insures you until it does.
Yeah.
Because it does seem like a necessary evil, but at the same time, it could be the thing that
makes or breaks you.
That makes or breaks you. So, I mean, his story.
But his story, he had a deeper why behind what he did. Mm-hmm. When he was 16 years old, his dad died, and then his mom died. And that was in the 60s. And that was when you bought everything on credit,
Yeah.
They had no insurance, and they basically came and repossessed their whole life. He watched them come take the house, or take the cars, then take the appliances, take the furniture, and then take the house. And basically, him and his sisters were orphans after that. And
he said that during that time period, he remembers having the distinct thought.
Yeah.
Of this will never happen to me again.
But that became when he went to Florida State, and your mom told me, I've only had one conversation with your dad, but he was passionate about making sure that people, they didn't understand the need.
Right.
And that was really what drove his business and how he got in that business. And it wasn't easy for him at first, but he had something deeper behind just what he was doing. He wasn't just selling insurance. No, he was helping people protect their lives and their livelihood, and
he believed that with all of his heart.
He did.
It was a conviction of his, really. Yeah. And I mean, to even further to know that it wasn't just talk, like a lot of insurance people have the impression, like they're sleazy car salesmen or something.
And there are a lot of those.
Yeah, there is. But he really believed what he was saying to be true, and that it mattered, and that you needed to care about it, because there might come a day that it changes the entire trajectory of your life.
Yeah.
And he would say, in terms of my mom and life insurance, and this is true, he said, every financial decision I make, and he's perfectly healthy. But he said, every decision I make is with the assumption that your mom is going to live 20 years longer than me, and that I don't want her to skip a beat from the lifestyle that we've established and how she lives. I want her to not have to worry about money for a day of her life should something happen to me.
He wanted to make sure she was taken care of.
And I tell you that those decisions that he made leading up to that, he passed away very unexpectedly in 2012, is that he did. Yeah. Every decision he did make ensured that, and it did ensure that for my mom. And I mean, he would say, and this was true for him, that it was like life insurance in that way, and what you're protecting and who you're providing for is like the final love letter to the person. And he wrote my mom a great love letter.
But not just that. There was a story, because the really bad tornadoes that came through Gardendale, Fultondale, Birmingham, Pratt City in 2011.
Right.
The path of the tornado when it went through Fultondale, and I actually wrote about that, and I saw that right after it happened. There was a motel there that got leveled.
Yeah.
And your dad sold him a policy 2 weeks prior.
Yes.
The guy didn't have insurance.
Yes.
And your dad just, are you crazy? Like, why would you not want to insure your livelihood?
Right.
What do you think that guy thinks about your dad?
Right. No, he said he saved his life.
Like, crazy.
He said, I really don't know what would have happened to me and my family if I hadn't been protected in that. So
all in all, you worked for your dad. You came to love it.
Yes,
your brother came. So basically, you started working for your dad. You loved it. Y'all developed like a professional relationship. Then your brother came. He started working for your dad. Then your sister's husband. So y'all were one family.
Yeah.
State Farm Agency in Gardendale, Alabama, rocking and rolling, doing the thing. And I just love that part of the story.
Well, it's crazy. Within 1 year, like we were living in different countries, different states. And then a year later, we're all in the same state working for my dad. I mean, his ultimate dream come true, right?
It's beautiful. I love that.
Yeah, but the beauty of that though is that what we didn't know in the time, and all the things I talked about, how hard it was, like the transition for all the reasons. But like I said, when my dad did go to heaven very unexpectedly in 2012, that little did I know that the decision to move here would bring me the last year and a half with my dad here on earth. And I always say, like, that's the biggest, I think, gift I've ever received. Like, just being able to reestablish a connection in our relationship as adults and work with him. And like in that process, we were able to kind of resolve some things of my childhood. I mean, some heavy stuff, some normal stuff, but really just like, I can honestly say that when my dad went to heaven, which was, we didn't know it was coming, that nothing was left unsaid. Mm-hmm. And that it was just a beautiful time, even though it was hard in the moment. Like, looking back, like zooming out, I realized like I was living in just one of the greatest gifts of my life. So I mean, it's just neat to see how that all works out. And I challenge myself on this on a regular basis, and others too, just like, you may be in a season that seems really hard and seems like, gosh, this just seems like nothing is like working out. But like, fast forward or zoom out, or like years pass by, like, what gift are you in the middle of that you can't see
that you
when
don't
you're in
know.
it? And
that's beautiful.
And I was experiencing and living in a gift that was, one of the greatest of all times, but didn't know it. Anyway, it was just a really sweet, fun, rich time in my life before.
Beautiful.
So,
well, not to end on a heavy, but our time is, coming to a close on this one. Maybe the next episode, maybe we'll unpack that in the next episode.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I was going through a similar situation with my grandmother. And my granny, she was my person. Mm-hmm. She passed away in March. Your dad passed away in June of 2012. So before we got together, we both experienced some heavy, heavy loss.
Yeah.
Like, really, almost like identity-changing loss. Like,
I mean, truly, because, my grandmother passed away in March as well.
Yeah.
3 months before my dad, but...
My granny was more than my grandmother.
Right, yeah.
She was my... And I don't think I fully realized it until she took her last breath, what she meant to me.
Yeah.
And, she was my...
person.
She was my person. Mm-hmm. All right, well, guys, thanks so much for tuning in. This is
heavy. Okay.
this is good though. I mean,
yes.
If your story's going to be about part of my story, we got to pull these things together.
It's revving up.
All right, well, we'll see where we go from here.
All right.
So far, it seems like nothing has went the way we planned.
Yep.
Who would have thought we'd be 4 seasons in?
Yep.
It's crazy. But thanks so much for supporting us. Thanks for listening, and we love you guys.
All right, see you next time.
All right.
Bye.
Bye. Well, hey guys, we hope you enjoyed the podcast.
Written and produced by the Team Jones Company.
Yours truly, James and Haley Jones.
If you like what you've heard, you can subscribe to all of our podcasts.
Download the Patreon app. You can get all of our content early and ad-free. Straight Out of Prison, The For Real, and Narrowing the Gap. There's a specialized feed there for all subscribers. You'll get downloads, updates, exclusive contents, live Q&As, and more.
Or head over to teamjones.co/podcast and click on the Become a Patron button.
And I'll also put that in the show notes.
Other ways you can support us is to like and share, leave a rating and review, and support our sponsors. They help us provide this platform for free.
Listen on Apple, Google, Amazon Music, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and more.
And thank you again for being a part of our story.
Oh, I love that. Anything out of these videos, please hit the like button and subscribe. If you never want to miss a recipe or anything I do, hit the little bell and you'll get notifications.
Wait, what? THEY apostrophe LL. Holy cow. That is a lot of food boats. What are you making, buddy? A caterpillar? That's awesome.
And I'm going to make it a tail.
Oh, awesome.
A tail has a caterpillar.
Good job. It's time for a shower, okay?
Okay.